Hello viewers, I'm Advocate K. Rawat from Lexis and Company. Today we're going to talk about one very important topic under tort, which is absolute liability. The concept of absolute liability evolved in India after the case of MC Mehta versus Union of India. As you all know, it was a very famous case, also known as oleum gas leak case. This is one of the historic cases in India, in Indian judiciary. The case of MC Mehta is based on the principle of strict liability, but with no exception were given, and the individual is made absolute liable for his acts. It is based under this principle that the defendant won't be allowed to plead defense if he/she was at default was laid down in Rayland versus Fletcher case. After the Bhopal gas leak case, many people lost their lives and are suffering from some of the fatal diseases through the generation, and because of this there was an urgent need to develop a rule under strict liability which had no exceptions available to the defendant to escape from the liability. The rule laid down by the Honorable Supreme Court of India is much wider than with respect to the rules laid down the House of Lords in the case of Rayland versus Fletcher. It was propounded by the Supreme Court that where an enterprise is engaged in a hazardous or inherently dangerous activity, if any harm results to anybody on account of the accident in operation, the enterprise would be held strictly and absolutely liable to compensate to all those who are affected by the accident. Now, there are some essential elements of absolute liability which are as follows. Number one, dangerous thing. Number two, escape. Then non-natural use of land. Then mischief. So, what are the scope of rule of absolute liability? In most of the places, the rule of strict liability and absolute liability are seen as exceptions in the law, and the individual is held liable only when he/she is at fault. But in such cases, the individual could be held guilty even if he is not at fault. After the catastrophic accident of oleum gas leak case, the Act of the Public Liability Insurance Act 1991 was introduced with the main purpose of providing immediate relief to people who are victims of the accident in which handling of hazardous substances is involved. The agenda behind this act was the act will create a public liability insurance fund which will eventually used for the purpose of compensating the victims. Hazardous substance under this act is defined as any substance which by any reason of its chemical or any property is liable to cause any damage to human beings, other living creature, plants, microorganism, property or to the environment. The term handling is described in section 2 subclause C of the Public Liability Insurance Act 1991, which is clearly expression of the rule absolute liability laid down in MC Mehta versus Union of India. I hope you are pretty much clear about the concept of absolute liability, its essential and the scope of it. And if not so, then do let me know in the comment section regarding all your doubts and queries, and I will clear all your doubts and queries in my next video. I will see you guys super soon in my next video with some other legal topic. Till then, take care of yourself.